Well, good day, everybody. This is Chris with the Ancient Scholar. Hope this video finds you all doing well. I'm actually getting ready to take a little break here. It's about half an hour before the Google Pixel presentation, if you will. The devices have actually officially dropped and are available for pre-order. And so what I'd like to do is just do a follow-up from my video last night and talk a little bit about my impressions of what Google has on offer. And I am going to focus primarily on the Pixel 11 base model, not so much the Pro XL, or the Fold, because my interests for the last several years have been primarily with that base model, and I think that the base model gives you virtually all of the noteworthy options at a price that is substantially lower than you would pay for the Pro XL, Fold, etc. So that's what I'm primarily going to focus on. So with that in mind, there really weren't any substantial surprises with this update to the Pixel line, and I would say that I'm still fairly ambivalent about it. And I'm of kind of two opinions. My first opinion is, would I recommend somebody going out and buying the Pixel 11 base model? And I would say for $900, absolutely not. Straight up, no. That said, however, if you get a really good trade-in on an old Pixel, and you were among many of the people that received discount codes from Google up to $150, I'm looking at, I've got, I think, between $500-$600 trade-in on my my prior Pixel, as well as a $100 code, and then $100 of cash through the Google store. If you put all of that together, to me, I'm looking at it paying at about just a little over $300 for a Pixel 11. At that point, with the trade-ins, the rebates, etc., I think it is a much more appealing offer. But I absolutely would not recommend anyone drop $900 of their own money to get this. I do not think that it's worth that, but certainly I think it's worth a few $100s with a good trade-in and some Google credit through the store. Then I think it's a much more appealing deal. So when we compare the Pixel, so this is the Pixel 10, but we compare the 11 to the 10, what I would say is that the Pixel 11 appears to be what the Pixel 10 should have been from a hardware standpoint. So some of the real noteworthy improvements that I can see, it does appear that there has been some significant upgrades to the camera system, mainly the primary or the wide angle camera. It looks to be a completely different system or sensor than what was on the Pixel 10. So if I look at the Pixel 10 had a 48 megapixel sensor with a f-stop of 1.7, 82-degree field of view, and a half-inch sensor. So fairly average to below average when compared to other sensors and cameras in its category. If you compare it to something like, say, the iPhone 17, but the rear main camera, wide-angle camera, if you will, on the Pixel 11 is still a 48 megapixel sensor, but that doesn't tell the whole story. It's still 48 megapixels, still has a 1.7, an f-stop of 1.7, 85 degree field of view, but it comes with a 1/1.56 inch sensor. What does that mean? Well, that means that the this year's sensor has an approximate diagonal size of about 10.3 millimeters compared to the 8 millimeters that you get with a half-inch sensor, which roughly gives you about a little over 60% additional area. And that kind of comports with what Google is advertising, where you're getting approximately 60%, I think it's 56% more light capture versus last year. And that seems to comport if we just kind of look at the actual size of the sensor. I'm not sure what kinds of pixels they're using. I think, is it 8 micron pixels is what they were using in the last year's model. I don't know the size of the pixel for the Pixel 11, but it is definitely a different sensor, and it is a much larger sensor, and it could potentially be a substantial improvement to last year's half-inch sensor. That said, the other two cameras seem to be exactly the same as last year. The 13 megapixel ultra wide with a 2.2 f-stop, 120 degree field of view, and a very small 1/3.1 inch sensor. So it looks to be exactly the same as last year. And the telephoto camera looks to be exactly the same. It's a 10.8 megapixel, the f-stop of 3.1. So you're going to need a lot of light, and it is exactly the same specs as last year, with a 23 degree field of view in the 5-power optical zoom, and it is rocking a 1/3.2 inch sensor size, fairly small. And exactly the same size as last year. So I think the ultra wide and telephoto cameras are exactly the same as last year, but the main camera, the wide angle camera, seems to be different, and it does seem to be a substantial upgrade compared to last year. So I'm actually really happy, and that really should have been what the Pixel 10 had, instead of the basically the overall downgrade that we got from the Pixel 9 versus a Pixel 10, with the exception of the telephoto camera, which was new. So yes, the Pixel 11 has 3 cameras. The primary camera seems to be a completely new system with a much larger sensor size. The camera assembly, or plateau, or bar, or pill, or whatever you want to call it, seems to be substantially less thick, about 40% less thick, and so it's not going to come out as much. And it's purported that at least with the proprietary Google case, you essentially get a completely flush fit. So it's similar to the Pixel 9a or 10a, which is more or less flush if you get the proprietary Pixel case. So that's cool. That's, a little less obtrusive. Overall, though, that aside, the battery is just ever so slightly larger on the Pixel 11 versus the 10. It's less than 50 milliamp hours difference. I doubt it's going to make any substantial difference, but that is a change. And it does look like some of the memory is different. It comes with a 256 gigabyte versus 128 gigabyte minimum storage, 12 gigabytes of RAM. I believe it's still using the older UFS 3.1 memory instead of the newer 4 point whatever is being used in the more contemporary offerings from other companies. So, you know, that is what it is. But it is definitely an upgrade in read-only memory versus last year. But the price has been upgraded, but that was certainly not any surprise. So it's increased by 100 US dollars, and it is increased in every other market throughout the world as well. The processor is the new Tensor 6. I believe it's a 2 nanometer architecture. It's purported to be 20% more efficient, which means we could see some substantial battery life gains with the Pixel 11 versus a Pixel 10. They're purporting 30 hours of use. What is that? Is that like, you know, Apple continuous video playback? Is that their metric? Versus 24 plus hours on the Pixel 10. So that's a several hour difference. And so battery life gains may certainly be noticeable compared to last year. So as you all can see, the overall improvements are not substantial, but they certainly are notable. And I think that the Pixel 11 versus the 10 is far more improved than the Pro models. If you look at the 11 Pro versus, say, the 10 Pro, I think the delta is much larger on the base models than the Pro XL models. And so I think that you are getting more benefit and more bang for your buck going with the base model. Now, the base model does not have the new pixel highlight feature, which in my humble opinion is very gimmicky and really it really plays no factor whatsoever in my decision to what kind of pixel I'm going to get. So what am I going to do? I have actually pre-ordered the Pixel 11 base model with the 260 gigabyte base storage, but I went ahead and traded in my Pixel 10. I got the full trade-in value on the Pixel 10, and I got $100 of credit through the Pixel store as well. And so I'm only going to end up paying about $400 for a brand new Pixel 11, and I think at $400 it's actually worth it for me to have really the improved camera system, improved, I believe the overall battery life is going to be improved quite a bit, as well as a slightly smaller, less intrusive camera visor, and the additional storage. I think all of that together for me, is worth it, but it would certainly not be worth it if I was having to pay the full cost of the Pixel 11. So that's kind of where I'm at. We'll see what comes of the presentation here in about 15 minutes. I'm probably not going to watch it. I hear it's going to be similar to last year, and last year's presentation was just utterly cringy and just silly, and just really not really for me. I get that it probably appeals to a lot of people and it's very self-aware, but I don't know that we're really going to get anything that we can't easily get from the announcement on the Pixel store, the Google store. I know I've seen some of the reactions, and there are a lot of people who are incredibly underwhelmed by this. And I think a lot of people are really valencing things toward the Pixel 11 Pro, Pro XL, and the Fold, and they're looking at, you know, paying full price, and that is kind of what the primary valence of their reaction is, where I'm looking at things very differently. I'm like, well, I'm looking at the base model, I'm looking at trade-in, I'm looking at what do I get from the Google store, right? And so my decision is not solely based on have they completely revolutionized the device. It's really, am I getting a good trade? How much am I actually paying at the end of the day? And at the end of the day, the $300-400 that I'm actually going to pay for this, is it actually worth it for the device? And I think it potentially very well could be, assuming that they have good stability and good updates, which I don't feel really occurred on the Pixel 10, but very well could on the Pixel 11. And I think the camera is a substantial upgrade. The main sensor seems to be a substantial upgrade. With the new processor, it looks like, you know, and there are a lot of additional photographic options that are making it, and a lot of AI stuff that's coming to the base Pixel 11, that I probably won't use, but cool, they're there. And yeah, I really think that the base model, if you can get a good trade-in, is actually worth considering. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's worth considering with the caveats that I've already outlined, however. All right, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I know that my take is a bit different from a lot of other takes, but hopefully, even if you don't necessarily agree with me, at least you can see where my motivation comes from. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Take care.